Okay, great. So we're recording. I am gonna, and can you pin me? Oh, you did. Awesome. I'm just gonna, great. So here we are with the fourth class in the series, this gentle movement series. It's great to have you all here and at home. So we'll start standing, okay? And as usual with this class, if there's anything I offer for you to do that does not feel okay in your body, I want you to listen to that and make adjustments as needed. Right. So we're going to start with a little just standing, a little wriggle. We're all coming from different places. It's the middle of the day. So giving yourself a chance to just kind of be like, oh, here I am today, right now. Right. And then slowly let that kind of settle and just take a couple moments of standing, pausing, and breathing. So inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the nose, maybe every once in a while. Exhaling out through the mouth. And we're going to start with some gentle movements of the wrists. Okay. So we'll start with this idea of circling the joints. So we'll work our way through the different parts of the body. And as we circle the wrists, I just want you to notice that yes, it's the wrists that are moving, but also it's the lower arm bones that are also moving. Great. And then we're going to do the elbows. Okay, so we're folding and we're unfolding. And you can inhale as you come in and exhale as you unfold. So that might mean that your movement is a little bit slower if you're linking it to your breath. And if it feels okay, you can actually let the arms come up. So now you're getting movement into your shoulders. And as you extend your arms, you can reach them back a little. Great. And then we're going to do some gentle circles of the shoulders. And I just want you to notice if it feels like it's mostly just the shoulders that's getting a little movement, or you might also notice that your rib cage is starting to move too. And then going in the other direction. Again, move in a range that feels okay in your body, no strain or pain. Great. And then come back to center. Great. We're going to work with the neck and head next. So just gently letting the head tip ear to shoulder, toward shoulder. Your ear will not touch your shoulder. And I don't want you to strain to make that happen. And then we'll change the facing. So let the head come back up. And now let the whole face turn toward one side and then the other. And as you do this movement, let it be slow enough that you just notice, like, oh yeah, I can feel my head turning from one side to the other, the neck. And I want you to remember this idea of less is more. So in doing something like this, if you can sense in yourself that you're like, I just want to go further, my neck should be able to go further, we usually start to move into tension and strain and force. So we really want to try to not have this be about forcing. Okay? And then we're going to do up and down. And when you do up and down, I want you to think about the base of your skull here, and that this is kind of slides or glides. Sometimes I like to think of a little string that pulls this way, and then a little string that pulls this way up. And that the movement is happening right here at the base of the skull where it meets the spine. And then let the head just kind of rest on top where it feels like home or it feels comfortable. Okay. And then we're going to start to wriggle out the legs. So we're just shaking out a leg. Feels better to move that leg in front. You can do that or hold on to something. If you have chairs nearby, you can always put a hand on a chair. I'm going to angle this camera down so you're going to see just probably the bottom half. So what we're going to do here, and if you want to hold on to something, you can, is we're just going to circle this leg in the hip socket. So the foot can stay touching the floor. And you can think of it two ways, that you are circling the ball of your foot on the floor and you're feeling that weight change on the ball of the foot. But let yourself also notice that the very top of your thigh bone is moving in your hip socket too. And you're also getting some movement happening where your toes meet the ball of the foot. And then just go ahead and try the other side. And just so you know, if this doesn't feel good to do standing, you can do it sitting like this. Okay, so this is another way that you can do it without having the weight on one leg. So the movement's happening up here and the movement's happening at the foot and the ankle a little bit. Great. And then we're going to do just a little bit of a hinge forward like this. And we're going to start to move these legs in a circle. So as you do this, the weight's going to shift on your feet a little bit. And your hands are definitely touching. If that doesn't feel okay to reach that far forward, then you could do the same thing with the hands on a chair. And then you could try to go in the other direction. Sometimes the hands on the chair feels better for the back. Great. And then from here, we'll come up to stand and just rise those arms up overhead. And then bring the arms down. Right. So you're going to do this at your own pace. So as your arms rise up, see about inhaling. And as your arms come down, exhale. Great. This is where you want to notice, how does it feel on your shoulders and your neck? Maybe you have your hands here instead of reaching all the way up. Do one more at your own pace. Inhaling, filling on the up. Maybe an exhale out through the mouth. Great. Now we're going to go back to these shoulder rolls. We've moved a little bit more, and I want you just to get a sense of that your whole body can be a part of this. So you could see, what is it like if I bend one knee or the other as I do this? You might notice that there's some movement of the neck and head. You might notice that there's not a ton of movement that happens in the whole body. So you're just kind of checking in to see. And if you can encourage that this movement can kind of work its way through the whole body rather than it just being at the shoulders. Yeah. Yeah, like maybe you're doing something like this with your arms. Great. And then slowly starting to widen the feet. So the feet are wider than your hips. Great. And we are going to do a gentle floppy twist. Yeah. Watch out for your walls or your chairs. And see about wherever you look, your opposite heel can lift up off the floor. Sometimes that keeps the knees from feeling like they're getting torqued. And I'm going to give you a couple different ways of doing this movement. This can be mellow, slow, like that. If you want to kind of build a little energy, you could have a little more bend. And that gives you usually a little swifter movement and a little more flop of the arms. But you don't have to do it that way. It's whatever feels best. So either that or maybe a little mellower. And the other thing we're doing is creating a rhythm of movement. And then come on back to center. Great. We're going to do a little bit of tapping. So we've done this before. Again, you can take a seat if you want to take a seat. We're going to do a little tapping around the hips. And you could actually get around to the back of the pelvis. So your low back here, the back of the pelvis, the sacrum is there. Around the sides of the hips. Well, I know what it feels like for me. I'll just explain a little bit for me what it feels like. One, anytime we bring in, it's like a percussive thing, and we've tapped here in the rib cage before too. So for me, when I bring this in with this tapping, I feel like my muscles kind of like relax a little bit. So if there's a tendency to grip the glutes or to grip your hip flexors here, or even the pelvic floor muscles at the bottom of the pelvis, the hips. Yeah, so it can kind of maybe feel as like it relaxes a little. I don't know what you feel, right? Yeah. Does it feel relaxing? Yeah. Great. So what if we do this up here? So this is still tapping. I like to do this one with fingertips rather than like a fist, but so again, so we have our rib cage in here, we have our lungs, we have our heart, our diaphragm attached to the rib bones. And so the percussive quality of this also, it just brings like awareness. So this is a sensory experience too. So it literally means that when we're doing this to different parts of our body, that part of our brain is lighting up because it's receiving that sensory information. And we can always let a sound out with it. And I think in general, we tend to do a lot of holding. So anything that we can do that starts to kind of like let any of that go. Yeah. Let it go. Yeah, exactly. All right, great. So we're going to do a couple of movements that are either sitting, or if you want to bring it down to the floor, you can. I'll show you both options, but it's going to be moving the rib cage. So I'm just moving a couple things here. If you want to do this on the floor, you could do it in tabletop, which would maybe look like this. Okay, and we're going to move from tailbone all the way to the head. Okay, and I'll walk you through it. Another option is if you like the idea of being on the floor, but you don't want weight on your wrists, is you could use chair or couch, and you could move this way. And then the other version, if you want to be seated, is it's a seated version where you're going to be moving the torso and the pelvis a little bit in a chair. Okay, so kind of decide where you want to go. I'm going to guide it down here on the floor. If you are on the floor, you might want to have a little pillow, blanket, or just if you have a mat, fold it up so you have a little extra cushion for here. Okay, so you choose wherever you want to go. And I want you just to start to move. I want you to think about pelvis. I want you to think about the whole length of your spine all the way to your head. Okay, and you're going to actually make up whatever direction you want to move in. Okay. But I want you to start to think about connections. So the bones of your pelvis, the back side of that pelvis are fused vertebrae, okay, which so way down here is your back. The vertebrae that make up your back, they're just fused there at the back of the pelvis, and then they come up. And then at some point, your rib cage meets all those bones of the vertebrae, right? So then you have all your rib bones coming in. That's the middle part of the spine. And then your shoulder blades are there, and then your collarbones, your arm bones, that's around your shoulder girdle area. And then the vertebra up here where your neck is, there aren't any other bones attaching to there. But then you have this head right on top too. So depending upon where you are, maybe you want to reach back, maybe you want to reach forward. And the seated version of that, just so you know, is it could be reaching here, and you could gently be doing some of that movement, leaning forward this way, okay, if you don't want to have weight on the hands or be on the floor. And I'd love for you for a moment just to think about an accordion. So when an accordion is played, like half of the accordion gets scrunched together and the other half opens up kind of like a bellows. So I want you to think about whatever direction you're moving, it's kind of like that. That's happening in your body. Your ribs are getting scrunched on one side if you're side bending, the other side, they get a little bigger, but also your vertebra, they're in smaller ways, they're moving in relationship to one another. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and we'll start to come back up into standing. So as you start to go there, I just want you to see if there's any kind of movement that you want to do on the way, anything that feels good for you. I just noticed I wanted to tuck my toes under and get a little stretch at the soles of my feet. And I'm kind of wanting to kind of have this in between place, leaning a little forward into a chair. So again, this is your time to kind of make this your own. Figure out, how do you want to come up to stand, and what kind of movement does your body want? And I think if you have as your general rule is, I'm going to go slow and I'm going to notice how it feels, and you're not going to force anything, then I don't think you could really do any harm for yourself. Okay. And you're eventually making your way back up. Great. And you can have your feet be wide again. Okay. And we're actually now thinking of a metronome. If you haven't seen a metronome, it kind of goes like this, like that. So this is the anchor point right here. We're starting to tip our hips like that. So this is where each body might be slightly different. What we're trying to aim for is our knees and toes are pointing forward. Okay. And our feet are probably wider than our hips. And what we're actually trying to not do is a side bend. We've already kind of done side bends. We're actually now trying to move at our hip joint. Yeah, and if it's helpful, you can put your hands right here. It's right at the spot where your thigh comes up. Yeah, right there. So your waist is up here. That's the top. You can even feel the top of your hip bones maybe if you push in. We're actually going lower to where the top of your leg is. And then we're trying to move right there. Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. And then come back up to stand. Bring the legs a little bit closer underneath. And we're going to go back to the slower than we had been before, circling of the shoulders. And I want you to just see if you can notice that you're also side bending, right? At some point, your torso has to kind of do a little side bend. And then can you also notice that you are doing a tiny little bit of rotation? At some point when your shoulder comes forward, the other one almost goes back a little. So you now have a little bit of rotation happening in your spine too. And then coming back to center. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a breath practice right now. You can do it standing or sitting. I think I'm going to do it sitting. So you could also sit on the floor if you want to do that. But we're going to use this idea of touch while we work with the breath. And it's just going to be using fingers. Okay. I think I'll move a little closer. So you can think about some of these things as like strategies that we work with to remember, like little tools that you can come back to throughout your day. So let's see if in sitting, I don't know if you can see at home with this, my feet are on the floor. Okay, so ideally the feet are flat on the floor and not with the heels up. And so, yeah, you might have to scooch yourself closer to the edge of your seat in order for that to be able to happen. Okay, great. So this, you could either use your fingers touching your legs, or you could use your fingers touching one another, okay? And all we're gonna do is we're gonna inhale through the nose and we're gonna exhale through the nose, okay? And while we do that, we're gonna just press the pointer finger either down into the thigh or press the pointer finger into your thumb, okay? So you're just gently pressing your pointer finger on the inhale, and on the exhale, you're gently pressing that pointer finger down, and then you release. And then you just take a breath without any pressing. And then when you're ready, then your middle finger is going to gently press into either your leg or your thumb on your inhale, your exhale, and then you release for a breath. And then your ring finger, inhale, you gently press. And for the exhale. And release for a breath. And then the pinky. And then just a gentle breath without any pressing. And then just very gently, all the fingers just gently press into the legs, just a little bit on the inhale and the exhale. And then you release that gentle press. Just take a breath. Great. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And in the seated position, we're going to do a little bit of movement of the torso again. You can think of it as rib cage movement if you want. So before we initiated with the shoulders, now I want you to get a sense that you're initiating the movement with your rib cage, which might be a little weird. Your shoulders and arms are going to move with you, but we're really trying to get a sense that this part of the body is moving, which also means your spine is moving. And if it's helpful for you to put hands here and to actually feel like, oh yeah, this part of me is moving, you can do that. So I want you just to, while you're kind of doing
I can't hear you anymore, Amy.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. I think we're good. Tell me if that happens again. Okay. Calming, yeah. You calm down with the breath. Okay. Off because I think the battery is dead on that one. Can I just, Ellen, can you let me know if you can hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay, great. Different mic setup now. Rolling with the flow here. Great. Sometimes when we do a breath practice, the opposite can happen. So just know that if it made things feel a little anxious or whatever, movement is a lovely key. So we're going to actually do a similar thing where you can either have fingers pressed to thumb or pressed to the legs, or you could even do it this way, where like fingers touch another hand. So I'm going to let you kind of vary it up. If you're sitting at a desk, right, doing work, you could be pressing hand into the desk, fingers into the desk. Okay, and you now are going to have permission to do any kind of movement you want while you do that. And you could stand, you could sit, it's up to you. So I'll just say pointer finger and I'll work my way through. I'll use less words this time, okay? So when you're ready, and you're gonna go at your own breath pace. Don't feel like you have to follow along with mine. So pointer finger. Inhale and exhale. Just take a breath in between. Middle finger. Remembering to just explore with this idea of movement while you do it this time. Ring finger. Pinky.
Takes a little concentration.
To add the movement piece. Yeah.
To breathe once and then let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take a breath and let it go.
Breathe and then let it go.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So guess what? You can do it however you want. So whichever way works best for you. And again, we probably spent maybe a minute doing that, right? And so it's a way that you can throughout your day take this moment to just pause, check in, breathe. Okay, and normally, unless it's feeling like it's an agitating thing, it will normally help to slow down the breath and to help kind of like whatever's out there, maybe kind of help you connect in. And if whatever's out there is really distracting or really getting your attention, maybe doing the thing where you have to concentrate more, meaning movement and breath, that was one that you had to think more about, might help you shift out of whatever is happening out there. Or maybe you don't want to have to work that hard at it, and going in a way that requires less concentration might work better for you. This is where we're all unique.
But you're doing it on a steering wheel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just don't close your eyes while you're driving.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I take a breath like a lion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calming it down. Yeah, great. All right, yeah. All right, we are going to move these ankles a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple things to do here. And we're going to, as we move the ankles, we're going to also think about feet and grounding, okay, as another way to think about how to settle the body a little bit. So here's the feet here. And we did standing, moving the feet, right? But we're just going to kind of do this a little bit here. And I really like to give you strategies that you can use throughout your day. And oftentimes we're sitting and we're doing stuff with other people around, right? So literally this is one thing that you could just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to move my feet. Not only are you getting movement and you're moving blood through the legs because you're moving your feet and helping to pump the blood out of the legs more. You're just starting to bring awareness down here. So then scrunch your toes up and then relax your toes. It's almost like you're trying to pick up something with your toes if there was paper or fabric there, right? Okay. And then I want you to think about your feet as this part of us that kind of meets the ground, meets the earth. And even though we're oftentimes in buildings with floors or have shoes on, that if we think about these feet grounding us down, so go ahead and just relax your toes. It's really great to notice when you normally sit, do you sit like this? Do you sit like this? Do you sit like this? And just for a moment, try some of those things. Just notice what feels different in your legs if you bring your heels up like that. I notice I have to do a lot more work all the way up to here even. If you sit with the legs crossed, like muscles have to pull your legs closer. So that's just like extra effort, right? Which just means if we have the habit of it, it means for long periods of time, all these other muscles are working. And if we sit cross-legged or like I do this all the time, I don't know why, it's just I do. So we're just starting to notice. It kind of feels good. It's like supported. It's for a little bit, right? So if we think about too, this idea of planting our feet can also sometimes help us come out of some compensation patterns. Because I want you to notice, if you cross your ankle, I mean, whatever this is, cross your leg, normally there's like, you're in a little side bend, sort of, kind of, or your shoulders do something like that. So if we sit like that for long periods of time, it means every day we are like cranking ourselves into a position that, like, honestly, is probably not the best for us. So not only is it just about like posturally helpful, then there's also this idea of like we're like, I like to think of feeling my feet. So when I have these moments of feeling a little stressed or whatever, I'm always like, feel my feet. So we're going to now, in standing, link this idea of the breath also with connecting down to the feet. And I want you just to think about this again as like a strategy or a tool that you can use, maybe to bring calm, maybe to bring some grounding, and also probably a little bit of coming out of any compensations with our standing posture. So go ahead and stand if you're not there already. And in standing, we're going to do that same thing where we scrunch our feet, kind of scrunch our toes and like lift our arches. You're kind of trying to pick up some paper with it. And then I want you to slowly relax the feet, almost like you are opening up your feet to the floor. Okay, and then when you kind of grip your toes a little bit, I want you to notice what feels different. Okay, if we have a lot of tightness in our feet, we tend to also have tightness up the legs, into the pelvis. And then I want you to just relax. So what we're going to do here is, this might be, we have to think on it. On the inhale, I want you to slowly like grip your feet. So you're just kind of tightening your feet, whatever that means to you on your inhale. On your exhale, you're going to relax your feet. Do it one more time. So when you inhale, you're going to kind of grip your toes, soles of your feet. And on your exhale, you're going to relax all the muscles of the feet. Now we're going to add. So you're doing that inhale, a little grip of your toes and feet, do it a little less. And then you're going to actually pull your shoulders up a little bit. And then on your exhale, you're just gently going to let those shoulders release down, and you're going to let your feet slowly relax. If you want to do it again with your feet, you can, or just do the shoulder part. So in the inhale, you're contracting and pulling your shoulders up. And then on the exhale, you're gently releasing. And every once in a while, it might be nice to do that with the exhale out through the mouth, because that does tend to slow your exhale down. So widen those feet again, and we'll come into our gentle twist. So there might be times when you do notice that, like, oh, my shoulders are like up to my ears, whether because it's just a stressful moment or you're doing something and that just tends to happen. So you actually contracting more and rising your shoulders up more and then practicing slowly releasing is a way to help release some of that muscular tension. You don't have to link it to your breath, but if you link it to your breath, then sometimes there is that little added bonus of pausing and noticing and having a couple deeper breaths.
I think it's good.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we build skill around awareness in our bodies, noticing how our bodies feel throughout the day, where we might hold tension, and especially what's happening with our breath, like are we breathing, are we holding our breath? So we have a real shallow breath. And every time we pause to notice, it gives us a chance to then make a choice. We can then do something to help bring us into any simple thing that we can do with a little bit more body awareness. So circle those ankles again. Maybe you keep your foot on the floor, or maybe you lift your foot up. Just peeking at our time.
Ooh, I feel crack.
A little crack, yeah. I have some cracking that happens too. All right, we are going to do something. I'm going to guide it on the floor, but you can do it sitting in a chair. I will just show you the seated part really quick, and then just know that the floor part would be lying on your back on the floor with your knees bent. Okay. So the seated version is what we've already practiced, your feet flat on the floor, not up like this or not in or crossed. And we're going to actually move from the pelvis, and we're going to move, and I'll use words that relate to moving the pelvis. And if you're upright, you'll just translate my words into vertical, and if you're on the floor, you'll hear them in relationship to being horizontal. So ideally, my words are enough so that you won't necessarily need to look at the screen or need to look up from where you are, but you always can if you need to. But the first thing we're going to do is bring our hands to our belly, if you feel comfortable with that. And we're going to move our hands up and down the belly. So up kind of toward where the ribs are. If you feel okay touching the sternum, which is the breastbone, the very front of the rib cage, you can touch there. Then you can go around your belly button down to the low belly. Your front of your pelvis is down low there in the front. You can touch up and down. We're following the line where the rectus abdominis muscle is. It goes from the front of the pelvis up to the sternum. And then we're going to take the fingers and we're going to find the rib cage, and we're going to just gently slide the fingers along the rib cage. So from the front where the sternum is, down the sides of the rib cage. Yep. And maybe even like at some point you won't feel probably any ribs anymore, but then you'll find your hip bones. So you can kind of gently kind of press your fingers in around the hip bones and back up. Not uncommon for the abdominal wall, all the muscles of the abdomen, to kind of be tight a lot, to do a lot of subconscious holding that we're not even aware we're doing. So with the hands here, now you can make a big circle. So you're kind of bringing the hands over to the left, down, over to the right, up, across the top. You're just making this gentle circle. And as best as you can, trying to have the belly and all the abdominal muscles be relaxed. And just notice how it feels. You can kind of pause for a moment. And then bring your hands to the sides of your rib cage. We're going to do a gentle breath where we are, and they don't have to be like, I would say the lower sides of your rib cage, down a little bit lower than the chest. There you go. And I just want you on your inhale to think about breathing sideways into your hands. And then on your exhale, you just let that go. And your hands are there just basically to give you a little help in finding this idea of breathing sideways. Your belly is probably still moving. It's just that we're trying to get the breath into more of a three-dimensional breathing pattern, which actually means that your diaphragm is being a little more active when you do this type of breathing, moving a little bit more. And then just gently now let your arms rest wherever they want to rest. And then just let your knees move a little side to side. If you're sitting in the chair, you might want to put your hands on the sides of the chair and move the legs like this. Okay, one more movement here. The knees aren't bent. Go ahead and bend your knees if you're on the floor. The feet. So this is the movement I talked about with the pelvis earlier. So if you're sitting, you're just going to translate this into a vertical upright wording. So the front of your pelvis will tip towards your belly button. There'll be a little work that happens in those low abdominal muscles. And then I just want you to release out of it. Not a huge movement at all. And then shift your awareness to the back side of your pelvis. Your tailbone is going to tip toward the floor. If you're sitting, the tailbone tips to the wall behind you. That arches your back. There's muscular work that happens on the back side of the body to do this. And then now you just slowly release out of it. Shift your awareness back to the front. So the front of the pelvis tips toward the belly button. It kind of scoops your pelvis and it presses your low back into the floor. If you're sitting in a chair, you'll roll and tuck your pelvis a little bit. To come out of this, you're going to relax your belly. Relax your belly. And you come to neutral. So on your own, just do that gentle movement into a little arch and you release out of that work. Neutral. A gentle little curl forward and the front of the pelvis moves toward the belly button. And you release neutral. Notice if you're holding your breath while you do this and try to breathe. And then when you're done, I want you to bring in any last little movement that can start to take you over to your side, up into sitting. So that last little movement we did with the pelvis, we were working with flexor muscles and extensor muscles. You can think of it as a little reset that you can do either sitting upright in the middle of your day, or it can also be really nice before you go to bed and you first wake up in the morning. If you have the interest, the flexibility in the middle of your day to hop on the floor and take 2 minutes to do that, it's also a great thing to do. All right, so when you're ready, we'll come up to sit. And I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We are here at 1 o'clock, so I want to thank you all for coming. Okay, yeah, and you're welcome. Yeah, and just know that these recordings will be on the Kellogg-Hubbard Library site. Yeah, and I offer other classes that you can join in via Zoom and some of them in person. So you can be in touch with me. Thank you all for coming. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's great.
Bye, everybody at home.